I hope you're doing good. Hope you are enjoying your Sunday. All right. So, and I'm just going for an hour or so here. Kim asked, I got into 3D printing. Haha, me too. 3D printing right there. And struggled with a few design programs. Well, yeah, we've all been there. Don't worry about it. Like Fusion 360. That's awesome. Now, I watched your LarsLive 102 about components and bodies. Yes. So let's just go in and just clarify what we're talking about. So if you go to YouTube and you type in, I think you can just type in LarsLive and let's do 102. Click on that and you will get LarsLive 102. So this video here, look at this. I didn't have any lights in talking about bodies and components. So that is definitely out there. Now, when Kim watched this one, my timeline includes everything for every component. I started fresh. I made a few components, but my timeline keeps on being like bigger and bigger and bigger. I've tried some different components, right? Maybe it's a setting or something like that. Let's take a look at that, Kim. Let's get back into Fusion 360. And let's talk a little bit about this. So I'm just going to start a new file here. So an empty file. So let's just dial it back, just two levels back, just so we all are aware where we are. So when you're inside of Fusion, so this is a completely empty model, you have a timeline down here in the bottom, and that will be populated with all your sketches, extrudes, and things like that. Over here in the left side, we have where we will have our bodies, our components, and different things. Now, I will just say that if you don't see this timeline, sometimes you will not see this timeline. You could turn it on and off. If you right-click up here, you can choose not to capture the design history. I'm going to click on that right now. And now you will see I don't add history line. This is great if you're working with imported models and stuff like that. But I would normally recommend that you always have that turned on. Capture design history. So you have this history down here. All right. So let's get into talk a little bit about, Kim, about how this works and what you can do. So right now, I just have a component in here. And if I go ahead, so you can see this is just one part component. If I go ahead here and open up a sketch and click on that sketch, and let's hit my S key and find my center rectangle, and I'm just going to do something that is 100 by 200 millimeters. Just a sketch. Finish that sketch right there. Now we will see that down the history tree we have this showing up here, right? So that's just a standard sketch. Now what we can do is we can go up and we can say I want to create a component from here. Say I want to create a new component. Click on that. And as soon as I do that, you will see that this icon changed from a single white square to a assembly file. And you can switch between the two views. So now you will see this is component number 1. And you will see it has, I call this the little fisheye. You'll see down the timeline there's nothing. Now if I go back up to the top and I activate that fish component, then my sketch comes back up. And you will now see that anything that happens from this point and downwards is now assembled down the timeline. So I have the first sketch we created, and I have that new component we just created. Now again, if I switch back to the fisheye, notice that the component has nothing in it yet. Now what I could do was I could go ahead now with that component activator, I could go in here, click open a new sketch. Okay, now you will see the edge of our original sketch that is up here, up on top of it. But we can't actually kind of use it right now. But we could do it, hit P for project. If I double click on this edge, I'm just going to select that sketch. Now I have copied the original sketch into this new component. Remember, we have that fisheye active. So now we have that sketch. And what I could do here was, I'm going to hit a center rectangle. Just going to draw a rectangle out. Let's make it 10 by 10. Something like that in there. And I'm going to do that 3 more times. Let's go up here. These out there. Hit D for dimension. And then I can actually just click on this. So you see that's D3. I can actually just click here, place that, D3. Click here, D3. So I'm actually just copying this 110 up here into the rest of them. So now I just have to change, if I change the D3 dimension, everything will update. This goes a little bit too fast. You can always come back and watch the recording later. But what I essentially have done right now is that if I change this one to, let's say, 15, you will see everything updates to 15 in here, except this one. Why? Because that got its own dimension. D3. So now I just made that whatever I change this dimension, then everything else will change with it. You see that? Huh, that's a lazy man to do that. Still inside of component here, I'm going to finish that. I'm going to hit Q. Now I still have that component active, and I'm going to select our 4 pieces. Break that down, minus 70. And now inside of component number 1, I have now created 4 legs. And you can see we have the sketch, we have the extrusion. Just slow left click, I can rename it, leg. See that? So we got legs. Now if I go up and click on the top one again and make that active, notice that it sees everything. So the top one will see everything you create down here. Now I'm going to create one more component. I'm going to right click, I'll say new component, and I'm going to call this one tabletop. Tabletop. You will see again that there's nothing inside of this one as I created, but I could do what I did before. I could open a new sketch on the top face here, and I could hit P for project, and I could double click to select that whole thing around there, hit Q for press pull, and we could do like a tabletop like that. Now you will see those 2 extrusions in there. We can go up and activate the legs, and we will see there's the 4 legs, or we can go all the way up to the top, and you will now see that we had our first layout sketch, the first sketch I created. We then had the component creation, a sketch and an extrusion for the legs, a new component for the tabletop. So this one here will always have everything in it, except when you start diving down into components, then it just narrows it down into the components in there. So that's the one thing I wanted to show you about this. Now, you might be asking, why did I do that original sketch? Because that is actually controlling everything right now. If I go in and edit this one here, and I made this one 50, you will see that everything updates in here on that original sketch. That original sketch is driving the sizes of this. So that's why that is kind of handy. Now, so you are right, Kim, about that these down here gets extremely long. What you can do is you can group them together down here, but you can only group in a certain order. And what I mean by that is I can take these 3 were created belong all together. And by the way, if I click on this sketch, notice how it actually shows with 3 lines that component it lives within that body, right? If I click on this sketch, you will see that lives within that body. So you get that indication when you click on a sketch. But what I can do is I can actually click on, if I hold down Control and I select these 3, they all kind of like belong together. If I right click on them, you can create a group. And when you do that, they all kind of like gets grouped together in here. And you can hit the little plus sign, you can expand them, you can hide them down like that. Same thing, I created these, everything in an order. I created first the component, then I created the sketch and the extrusion. I can also select these 3 items, hold down Control, select the 3 items, right click, and I can group those together. So that's one way that you can start kind of ordering things together in this timeline. But you gotta be a little bit aware of it. If I right click here and say delete and just get back to where we were before, you will see I cannot select this component and these 2 and group those together because they don't associate it. But what I have done, I did a plastic injection mold totally inside of Fusion. So if you go up here and you do search on Google, not on Google, but on YouTube, injection Fusion 360. I did this series here, Fusion 360 tutorial beginner to advanced, how to create a mold. If you watch that video, I'm pretty sure that in that video, in the end, I actually took like things like fasteners down here and I started grouping them together. So that's one way you can kind of clean this up with this. So I hope that was useful, Kim. So you can kind of start grouping it up. This also is an interesting topic that maybe is worth for me to mention.